Biden continues to lie to the American people about his policy positions. At the town hall last night, Biden once again lied about his stance on fracking. He says he doesn't want to ban it. Oh, really, Joe? Then what about all these times he said that he would ban fracking?
There are critics that suggest you're trying to have it both ways. That is, you want to tell the environmentalist wing of your party that you want to ban fracking, but you're telling workers here in Pennsylvania nothing to fear.
I never told the environmentalists that I'm going to ban fracking, period.
And what about, say, stopping fracking and stopping pipeline infrastructure
Exactly. You got to transition away from it. Look, you're going to ban fracking all across America right now, right?
I would love to.
Yeah, I'd love to too. I'd love to make sure we don't use any oil or gas, period. To look in my eyes. I guarantee you, we're going to end fossil fuel.
And this isn't just any issue. Cutting down on fossil fuels will destroy the energy independence President Trump has achieved for us. This weakens our national security. It also cost countless Americans jobs, of course. And the mainstream media gives Biden a pass on all of this. So with me now is biostatistician and founder of junkscience.com, Steve Milloy. Welcome back, Steve.
Hi, Karen. Thanks for having me.
So Biden is once again walking back his previous comments about fracking. So since we can't exactly get a straight answer from Biden, I want to ask you, Steve, what is Biden's climate plan?
Well, I think his plan is to ban fracking. You know, last night during his town hall, at first he denied that he was going to ban fracking. But then when pressed again by George Stephanopoulos, Biden didn't answer at all. And, you know, there might be a grain of truth to, you know, Biden's claim that he's not going to ban fracking because unless Congress gives him new powers, he's not going to do that. But I think Biden is going to do what Obama Biden did to coal plants during their administration. He's going to use the entire weight of the federal government to make it just so expensive to frack that no one's going to do it.
They always seem to do that. It's a slow death by regulation. They just regulate you out of existence. You can't keep up with all the costs, the payments. You get dinged a million times by the EPA and other such agencies. But to this, I want to get your explanation on what fracking exactly is, since it is something we talk about so much, but it's rarely defined.
Okay, so fracking is a process by which instead of drilling for oil, we drill into rock. And then we find the right kind of rock, shale rock, which holds hydrocarbons, and we fracture it with chemicals and pressure and extract the natural gas and oil from there. And the beauty of it is, oil well just goes straight down, but a fracking well can go in any direction. So it's got a lot less of a footprint, and it has completely revolutionized the world energy markets. Before the United States was at the mercy of OPEC. Well, thanks to fracking, which really came online about 10 years ago, not only are we energy independent, but we are energy dominant. We are an exporter of crude oil. And fracking, the reason that gas is in $2 in normal places is thanks to fracking. Otherwise, gas would be through the roof, and we would be at the mercy of OPEC.
So then why do you think it is that Democrats continue to push to get rid of fossil fuels? Because again, in that clip we showed, Biden consistently says that he wants to phase us away from fossil fuels.
Yeah. Well, so, there's a large part of the Democrat base that is they're just nutty environmentalists. They've been brainwashed in school, and they really think that somehow the world can run without fossil fuels. And I think that, these smarter Democrats are using these fools to, just as a political bludgeon, basically, to get enough mass to gain power. I think climate is really all about power. It's about power over the economy. 10 years ago when we were talking about Obamacare was about government control of just 16% of the economy, the healthcare system. Climate is about government control over the rest of it. You can't have climate control without not only national government, but international government, because it's called global warming for a reason, emissions all over the world. So you really do need like a, one world government.
And when it comes to this power, we always see here at home with the Democrats, abroad globally with the UN and other such organizations, they use the climate change crisis, it's not really a crisis, but they claim it's an existential crisis, to slip in communism. And I know you kind of have a running tally of that. For example, we'll be talking about global warming, the temperatures are increasing, and now let's abolish capitalism. How do those two things go together?
Well, because that was always the original agenda of climate. Climate's about controlling the economy. It's about crippling the United States. Which you're talking about on junk science, I have this, for the last year I've been doing this rubric, you need more evidence that climate is about communism. And I would, whatever news story I saw or whatever it was. So I've collected this on junk science now. And it's really astounding. I mean, from the Pope to politicians to activists, activist groups, individuals, universities, even Harvard Business School, they pretty much come out and admit that, we need to get rid of capitalism. Capitalism is evil. Capitalism is causing, climate change. And, we need to get rid of private property. We need to get rid of private homes. It's really quite insane.
And speaking of it being insane, what is one of the most shocking pieces of evidence that you've collected with your communism or environmentalism leads to communism running tally?
Well, that's really hard to say. I mean, the Pope, saying that we need to get rid of capitalism. I mean, the reason we have 7.5 billion people on the planet and we live such a high standard of living is because of capitalism. Then the other one, getting rid of private homes. I mean, if you've ever seen the movie Dr. Zhivago comes home from World War I and he doesn't, his home is not his anymore. There's 8 other families living in there. Is this what they want? I mean, you really have to read these quotes to believe them, and it really does expose what these people are all about. They're about controlling all of us. It's not about the weather, the climate, or avoiding wildfires or hurricanes or anything like that. It's about controlling us.
And when we see this unholy alliance between climate change alarmists and Marxism, when did these two movements start to become so intertwined?
Well, I think it's President Trump that really drove them out of the closet. As I said, I think that they were always intertwined together. The environmental groups have always been leftists. I mean, they historically left Greenpeace, for example. And so they've always had this in the back of their minds, but President Trump has really just, driven them out of the closet. Now they are front and center about it. And I have the examples on junkscience.com. And, it's at all levels of society. You'd be surprised. As I said, Pope, local state government officials. It's just unbelievable.
And it pops up even in the strangest places, because this past week we've been seeing the confirmation hearings for Judge Amy Coney Barrett for the Supreme Court. And even then they bring up that her father was working in the oil industry at one point, seeing if that would somehow color how she would rule in certain cases regarding energy and fossil fuels. And of course you see to it referred in the media as this is a settled matter, that the science is settled on climate change. But how settled is it? How much do humans actually contribute with fossil fuels to the overall temperature of the planet?
Well, just to start with Amy Coney Barrett, the environmentalists expect her to recuse herself because her father worked in the oil industry. That's crazy. As far as it being a settled science, well, it's a tremendous controversy. Just read the papers. People like me who have raised questions about climate science, we drive them crazy. There's nothing settled. It's quite a controversy. There's a lot more to it than just science. There's also economics and reality. And they never want to talk about any of that stuff. But it's all three. It's the science, economics, realities, politics. It's a huge controversy. There's no such thing as no controversy or settled science or settled anything. Climate is very much, a contentious issue.
And when it comes to reducing our carbon emissions, that is something the Trump administration has actually been leading the world in. China and India, they're the ones who keep increasing their pollution, their carbon output. We're actually cutting that down. We see that nuclear energy could actually be a great way forward. It's very clean, and yet the very same leftists who claim that they're fighting to reduce carbon emissions and to clean up the planet shun nuclear. What's the deal there?
Well, yeah, and it's really, you're right, nuclear power is emission-free, but the Greens hate it. But even more ironic, here's Joe Biden. I mean, the reason that the United States is the only industrial nation to really cut emissions is because of fracking. And what does Joe Biden want to do? He wants to ban fracking. The whole thing is just insane. And all it does is exposes people for what they are. They're power grabbers. They want control over us. That's all this is about.
Great point there, Steve. Thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thanks, sir.